Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. And this is an educational channel where we look at all kinds of different uh, theories of everything, mostly of the obscure and esoteric variety. Today is video number 273 that we have done on one of those theories called the reciprocal system of theory. And this was originally formulated by Dewey B. Larson back in the 20th century. The general idea is that the universe is not made out of matter, and the universe is not made out of energy. But the universe is made out of motion. Matter and energy are merely two different kinds of motion among many others. And motion is broadly defined as the relationship between space and time. That makes space and time the contents of the universe, not the container of the universe. And it makes time and space reciprocals of one another. They have a reciprocal relationship. Motion is basically a fraction or a ratio um, between time and space, with time being the time or space being the numerator and space or time being the denominator. So, for example, speed. Speed is a relationship between space and time, like all other motions. But speed is the most basic motion that we know of. The bicycle is moving 15 miles per hour, and that's 15 miles of space in 1 hour of time. Space over time. Now, you can see the reciprocal relationship if you decide to double the speed. If you double the speed, you can then say the bicycle is moving 30 miles an hour. That's doubling the speed. But you could also say, and it would be equally correct, to say that the bicycle is moving 15 miles per half hour. So you can either multiply the space or you can divide the time. That is reciprocal relationship. Now, when you have a reciprocal system, that means that one is at the center of the system, whereas in legacy science, the zero is at the center of the system. So with legacy science, you have zero, and then on the positive end, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on the negative side, you have -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. But with a reciprocal system, you have 1 at the center, and then the positive side is 2, 3, 4, 5, and the negative side is 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, and 1/5. So basically, with the legacy system is an additive system. You add them together and they get zero. Two sides on the same balance. You add them together to get zero. But if you're doing a multiplicative reciprocal system, then you multiply them together to get 1. 2 times 1/2 equals 1. 3 times 1/3 equals 1. And so on and so forth. Now, there are various caveats to the reciprocal system about space and time. Things about space and time that you have to keep in mind. One is that space and time have their coordinate aspects, meaning that they come in 3 or more dimensions, 3 or 4 dimensions, coordinate, XYZ coordinates, or if you're using Buckminster Fuller's tetrahedral coordinates, then you would have 4 coordinates. But that's something that we recognize with space, that space is multidimensional like that, but we generally do not recognize that with time. But in Larson's system, time has 3 dimensions. And then space and time also have their clock aspects. The clock aspect is a scalar motion, which is a motion that has a magnitude, but it has no direction or no particular direction. And you can recognize this in time, clock time. The clock is always getting later and later and later. It's moving, but it's not moving in any particular direction. It's just getting later and later and later. And we recognize that in general, the clock, but we do not recognize the clock in space. But we could, because we could envision that by using a balloon with a bunch of dots on it. If you blow up the balloon, all of the dots are moving away from each other. You suck in the balloon, all of the dots are moving toward each other, but in no particular direction. This is an emblem of the progression of space, or the flow of space. And this was also observed by the Hubble telescope. All of the distant galaxies are moving away from each other. They're getting farther and farther and farther apart. So that is the flow of space, that is clock space. And then the third caveat is that the space and time both come only in discrete units. They are quantized. There is no continuity of space and time. They come in chunks only, or units. So you have to have 1 unit of space before you have any space. If you do not have a full unit of space, then you do not have space. If you do not have a full unit of time, then you do not have time. And if you have exactly 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time, that is what Larson calls unit speed, and that is the speed of light. The speed of light is 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time. And those units he identifies, they're very small. The unit of space is approximately 4.5 times 10 to the minus 8 meters. And the unit of time is the incredibly small 1.5 times 10 to the minus 16 seconds, which means every second that goes by, there are 6 quadrillion, over 6 quadrillion units of time. So the units of time are very, very small, but they do exist. Now, Larson, this is what we just have gone through is basically Larson's first postulate. He has 2 postulates. The first is by far more important, but the second postulate basically states that the universe conforms to the relations of ordinary commutative mathematics. Its magnitudes are absolute and its geometry is Euclidean. Now, some of Larson basically took these 2 postulates and he went through a process of deduction. If this, then that. If this, then that. And I've gone through his talk. He gave a talk about this way back when. And I did about 15 videos on that much earlier in this series. So if you want to go back, and it's called The Outline of the Deductive Development of the Reciprocal System. And so you can go back and listen to Larson's step-by-step deduction of his theoretical universe. So he took his fundamental postulates and he developed them into a theoretical universe, and then wrote many books based on the results of his theoretical universe, including books on chemistry and astronomy and physics, atomic physics, economics, metaphysics, including some chapters on biology and psychology and religion and philosophy, even things like dream interpretation and ethics. Um, and After writing many, many books, Larson finally passed away at age 92 in 1990. Um, some of his acolytes have continued uh, studying up on the reciprocal system. Probably the most prolific, or at least one of the two most prolific, along with Dr. KVK Nehru, is Dr. Bruce Perret, who unfortunately also passed away in 2020, but not before he wrote a ton of stuff, put out a ton of stuff on the reciprocal system. No books, but a lot of articles. He ran about 3 different websites and put his thoughts down in those. And we are going to be looking at one of the writings of Dr. Bruce Perret right here. Now, he wrote some stuff. It was called the RS2 for Perret and for Nehru, the re-evaluation of the reciprocal system. So RS2. So they revised a few of the details of Larson's system. They didn't alter the general nature of the reciprocal systems, the space and time stuff, but just some of the applications, the deductive applications that Larson made, were subject to error, and it came out in the wash over the years. There were some sticking points, and I think Perret and Nehru did an incredible job of clearing some of those things up. And Perret tended to write in a fairly speculative manner about topics pretty far removed from, your general scientific subjects. When he did that, he wrote under the pen name of Daniel Phoenix 3. And Phoenix 3 was a government top secret project that included the Philadelphia experiment, the time traveling fiasco that took place on Montauk Point out at Long Island in the 1983, I believe. And I don't know if Perret was actually there or not, but he kind of writes as if he was one of the young computer programmers at that project. And so we are right now. This is our second day of reading this article from Daniel Phoenix 3 that is called "Time and Timelines." And this section is called "Through the Looking Glass." Now let's hop over to the looking glass. The Orion Cube is SM technology, Saurian men or spacemen technology. But looking glass is a reverse engineering of the golden sun disk of Mu that is mentioned in George Hunt Williamson's books. Don't know where the original device got to, but it was similar to the ring transporter on Stargate SG-1. I think all the portals mentioned in the video are looking glass ring transporters, not interplanetary stargates. As far as I know, Earth only has a single gate address and only one functional device down in Antarctica. The sun disk also had the ability to remote view, which was how a destination was determined by a priest that would use it for travel. Using song, mantra, and music, the priest could fine tune the device in a very specific destination, to a very specific destination that could be seen in the device before actually making the transit. It works with coordinate time, three-dimensional time, hence controlled by waveforms, music, mantra, chanting, singing, and the like. The obit, O-B-I-T, all-seeing eye, was an associated technology. They found that each place has a kind of DNA resonance to it. In the old days, it was temples and monuments, the large stone constructs made for a very stable resonance that was easy to find with the sun disk. The frequencies here were on the inner band of the inanimate realm. Once they started reverse engineering the system, they found they could come up with, they could tune up to the outer band of the biologic and pick up on the specific DNA resonance of any life form, giving them the ability to locate anyone, anywhere. The problems they have with the reverse engineered devices, both extraterrestrial and ancient, is that the devices engineered by man only contain inanimate structure, 3D space only. They have not yet realized that the water they have to use in these devices is living water. All life has a presence in three-dimensional time and creates a natural crossing between the sectors. Um, Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but there's when you have the speed of light is unit speed, that is dividing this universe into two parts, which Larson calls the material sector and the cosmic sector. The material sector is the sector of the universe that's moving slower than the speed of light, and the cosmic sector is moving faster than the speed of light. And if you have life, you have a combination of the two. There is a component that is in the material sector, and then there is a component in the cosmic sector that are directly out of phase and in the right proportions. Because normally, if you have something from the cosmic sector and something from the material sector, and when you when you combine them, they generally annihilate one another. But if they are directly out of phase, then they explode into life. Okay, now I'm just looking at some of his footnotes here. Um, this concept of empty space and solid time is very important to understanding the reciprocal structure of the universe. Atoms literally are solids of time, positioned in the coordinate vacuum of space. We then perceive the cosmic sector, the universe of antimatter, as wholes of space. Okay, so atoms are solids of time, and antimatter or cosmic atoms are wholes of space in the coordinate solid of time, which is the origin of the ether theories of the 19th century. Also, his definition of the SMs. SM is a designation to refer to the Saurian men or spacemen, often called reptilians. And obit is an abbreviation for the outer band individual tele. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing. There's a glare here. Tele Teletracer, which was leaked to the press by the designers due to ethical considerations. An Outer Limits episode was created with the same name for plausible deniability, as the ethical concerns regarding the use of the device were staggering. And then he also has a footnote here about living water, which is generally the work of Victor Schauberger, and he observed that water was certain aspects of water, certain areas of water had a living quality to them, and kind of trace that back to things like the fountain of legends, like the fountain of youth. But generally, it's like the origins of these are mountain spring water, I believe. But for Perret, they are a combination of cosmic. I believe it's water is H2O, and that the H is cosmic, the H2 is cosmic, and the O is material. For Perret, yeah, I could have that backward. Okay, now let's continue with the text. The third component of the of life, I guess, is the consciousness of the operator. They must comprehend coordinate time principles. The old priests created the discipline of hermetics and the river of time analogy to describe this function of consciousness. When you try to view three-dimensional time from a space-only perspective, you switch from a linear step measure, equal intervals in a straight line, to a polar step measure, which is equal angles, resulting in growth measure, which appear as an infinite series. Draw a line on a sheet of paper, put a dot above the line, connect the dot to the line with radii. If you equally space the angles between radii, you'll see where the radii hit the line at unequal distances. They get longer and longer the further you get from the orthogonal, or the right angle, and eventually spread to infinity when parallel. The reason they called it Looking Glass, aside from Alice in Wonderland's ability to transport to Wonderland, was that it was also a hall of mirrors. Because they assumed linear measurement in a polar etheric realm, they got reflections upon reflections upon reflections, each looking similar yet slightly distorted from the observer, or by the observer. This gave the impression of parallel universes. The distortions were introduced by the consciousness of the observer, but in actuality, they were just viewing a distorted recursion of the coordinate realm. I'll follow up with some commentary on the timelines and how to alter them, and even how to get your butt out of the predefined timelines. Okay, so this next section is called timelines. And we're just going to read the first paragraph just to get us warmed up, and then move on to this for tomorrow's episode. Timelines. The setback that occurs in many of these projects is the failure to understand the properties of time. And fortunately for us, they are usually too arrogant to admit that their science is inadequate. Those in charge of the projects always listen to the experts. And my definition of an expert is a person that knows more and more about less and less until he knows everything about nothing. As a result, the incorrect concept of time being linear and vectorial, the arrow of time stuff, predominates scientific thought and is taught in all the schools. So most people never think beyond that box. In order to understand the timelines, one must understand 3D time as a temporal landscape. And in that landscape, the future is what is in front of you, and the past is what is behind you. The present is where you are standing in the temporal landscape. And I would like to clarify that present does not change. If you were to freeze your presence in the moment called now, you would be eternal. But it would also be rather boring, as nothing would ever change. So when considering the concept of past, present, and future, try thinking of it as an orientation in a three-dimensional temporal landscape. And your position is constantly shifting ever so slightly, even when you believe that you are still. Okay, we might revisit that paragraph again tomorrow because this is pretty important here to the understanding of time. Now, when you think of time in the material sector, you think space is linear, time is curvature, it is rotation or degrees. So you would measure space in inches or a linear direction, but you would measure time in degrees in rotation. And then I believe if you went to the cosmic sector, then you would measure time linearly, and you would measure space as in degrees or in rotation. And that's what he's referring to when he refers to polar coordinates that he was using when he was talking about the step measure and the growth measure up a couple paragraphs. Okay, this is pretty difficult stuff, and he's getting into some top secret stuff. So you're being unrealistic if you're expecting it to be simple. If we're talking about time travel and we're talking about government black ops projects, it's probably going to be kind of difficult. So be realistic about your expectations. You're not going to be able to turn on a video and watch for 5 minutes and then understand it. It takes some study and some dedication and some repetition. So you may want to go over this video a couple times, or just wait till tomorrow. I'll go over this important paragraph again, and then we will resume talking about timelines. Okay, so thanks for tuning in today, and have a great day.